Be Mine, Chapter 5. My story will be very long and sad, my dear Kishunika. I will begin my family history by starting with my grandparents. My grandfather, Francois, was born to honorable people connected to high society in a home near the King's Palace in Paris. At that time, King Louis ruled France. However, as you know, he and all his family were executed by the guillotine in the French Revolution. So, my grandfather was very young during the time of this great upheaval, and by a miracle, he escaped the tragic, bloody revolution and left France shortly after both his parents were killed. For a long time, he wandered aimlessly through various countries, bound by grief and in shock. He had lost his purpose for life. Months went by until one day, by chance, he saw a most gorgeous young Polish woman. Her name was Mary, and she came from middle-class landowners who had spared no expense to provide the highest education for her. She loved to paint beautiful paintings and was a very accomplished artist. Francois greatly admired Mary, and quickly his heart was completely captivated. They fell in love, and when they married, he took her last name, Bronslavskiy, to completely cover up the French roots of his family as they began their new life together. This is why when my father was born, he was given the French name Victor from his father Francois, but carried forward the last name that was Polish of Bronslavskiy. So from early childhood, Francois' boy, Victor, loved painting just as much as his mother, Mary. And within a short time, art was his sole purpose for existence. As he grew into manhood, he strongly yearned to travel to France and Italy to study art. But naturally, his father, Francois, stood firmly against these desires to protect him from the painful past of France. The Bronslavskys' small estate was near the capital of Krakow, Poland. Victor's artistry increased under his mother's tutelage, and one day Francois, his father, was invited to Warsaw on business. Victor grasped this opportunity and begged his father, "Take me along." His father said yes. The trip was very enjoyable for both of them. Francois shared with Victor about his former travels, and Victor listened intently. They both marveled at the vast scenery filled with hillsides and glens and farmlands. As they entered Warsaw, there was a wonderful mood of free spirit in their feelings. In those days, the inns that were along the byways were not the safest place to stay overnight, so Francois hoped that they might lodge at a nearby estate of Count Nezhensky. The Count was only a slight acquaintance, but they had met some time ago while on a hunting party on land of a mutual friend. But other than this one outing, they had little else in common. Count Nezhensky was the sole heir of a vast estate from a very old noble Polish family. Francois was well aware that when he took his wife's last name, he had severed all ties to his family's noble French lineage. No nobility was connected to the name Bronslavskiy, yet he welcomed the opportunity to share his wife's ancestries. Some people knew how Francois had willingly cut himself free from France to be joined to a new homeland in Poland, and many people in Krakow deeply respected Francois. But Count Nevzhinsky was not one of them. The Count respected Francois as a man, but because he was middle class, they could never respect themselves as equals. So with all this in mind, Francois and Victor had to decide whether to stay in the smelly public pub or to present themselves unannounced at the castle of Nevzhinsky. After a little discussion, they decided to try the estate of Nevzhinsky. "We will not think of ourselves as lower or higher class. We will stand on our own merit. And even if we are turned away at the inn, the inn will always be an option for us," concluded Francois. So in agreement, they went to the Nevzhinsky estate. To their great surprise, the Count himself came to the entry hall to greet them and invited them to stay the night in his castle. Count Nevzhinsky and his wife and a young countess of 16 were pleasantly astonished by the education and manners of Victor, who was aged 25. Victor shared that this was the first time he had ever traveled so far from home. Yet throughout the evening, it was evident that Victor had detailed knowledge and adventurous travels in many countries because of the repeated tales that his father had told him. So the father and son were unexpectedly at ease, and dinner sped by quickly and joyfully. The evening ended in a pleasant mood, and the Nevzhinskys fondly wished their guest a good night's sleep, and they retired. Francois rose early in the morning, and not wanting to impose further on his host, he instructed his servant to bring the horses and ready the carriage. He prepared a letter of gratitude to the Count for their pleasurable evening and their secure night of rest. He was just placing the letter on the table in the living room when suddenly the Count appeared in the hall. "Have you planned to leave us in the custom of the Englishman without even saying a goodbye?" asked the Count. "No, no, dear Count. I was carrying my letter of thanksgiving to the living room. I am pleased to have the opportunity to fully express my deepest appreciation to you in person for this lovely hospitality you extended to my son and I. However, I need to take my leave early to be in Warsaw before noon." So good, said the Count. "Where is Victor? Call him, please. We would like to have breakfast with you, since I am up early too." Francois called Victor, and he came to the dining room and bowed before everyone, over to the dining table, and at the table everyone seemed to be talking about painting and how grand it would be if Anna, the young countess, would have an instructor to teach her to paint. Victor excitedly listened to the conversation a while before very respectfully asking, "If my papa would be in agreement, I would like to teach the young countess to paint. I am a skilled painter of novice experience, and I come by my skill naturally from the bloodline of my mamma." "I think this would be a great idea if your parents would agree, especially since our estates are not too far away from each other, and on top of everything else, we will pay you a salary, and you will live in our castle, and any time you want to visit your parents, you may," persuaded the Count. The young Countess, Anna, with downcast eyes and barely moving her lips, whispered, "I would be so happy if you would agree, Mr. Bronslavskiy." Francois was uncertain what to reply to this sudden request, so he decided to rise and offer his appreciation and wish them a pleasant day. He promised he would let them know his decision soon after talking with his wife. The Count arose and wished them a pleasant trip home, and hoped that he would have the privilege of seeing them again soon. After the business in Warsaw, the road back to Krakow was long and tiring. Father and son sat in the carriage, each filled with their own thoughts. Francois looked at Victor and was overwhelmed with feelings as he remembered when he himself had first left France, so young and filled with strength. But life had galloped by so quickly, and through it all he had found life's most precious things, his beloved Mary and their fine son Victor. His heart stirred, his soul was light, life was good, but something as tiny as a kitten was scratching him inside. He realized just how tremendously they would miss Victor if Mary agreed to let him go. Their whole life had been centered firmly upon their son. Victor had different thoughts about the possibility of leaving home. He was excited about this new opportunity, yet he sensed the voice of wisdom faintly speaking to him as well. Leaving home would bring both happiness and tragedy all mixed together. When they arrived home, Mary eagerly embraced them as they both attempted to speak, interrupting one another as they tried to explain the offer to teach the young countess to paint. Mary was taken by surprise as she listened, and a sad smile crept over her lips. When they calmed down and retired to the living room, Mary stood by the card table and said, "You cannot run from your fate. You must decide, Victor. You are an adult. You must start your own path of life, my son." Victor's smiling face beamed. He never imagined everything would be decided so quickly. "Oh, thank you, my mamma. Thank you, my papa," he exclaimed, and suddenly he was saddened because he realized very soon he would be leaving them both. The next day, Francois sent a servant to carry a letter to the Count Bronslavskiy regarding their decision and agreeing to his proposal for Victor to give art lessons to the young Countess Anna. He inquired about when Victor should come. 3 days later, the servant returned with a letter from the Count. Victor's departure to the Bronslavskiy estate was set for the end of August. They would have just 2 weeks to complete preparations. It would only take a few hours for the servants to gather his belongings, but how long would it take to prepare their hearts for separation? Was their dearest Victor ready to leave his family and separate from his parents to begin his own journey? Victor had grown up listening to all his father's stories of adventure and travel, yet he was always surrounded by parental love and had had none of those adventures. His social life in Krakow had been full of invitations and intrigue. He lacked for nothing, but his emotions demanded that he begin his own personal adventure as a man now. His journey would be so different, so very different from his father's. Victor constantly wanted to be near his mother during these last days. Most of their time was spent in the garden where he painted individual portraits of his parents. Each were masterpieces. His mother was a beautiful woman with brilliant green eyes, as bright as the night stars. She had long black brows like 2 roads and a somewhat serious smile. Father was definitely French. His hair was the color of wheat at harvest, and it rested firmly on his shoulders. His eyes expressed strength and nobility. His stature was like a Victorian general, stiff and erect, yet personable, joyful, and full of vigorous life. Victor captured the true essence of his kind parents in his departing portrait gifts to them. The final day came, and the last words from Mamma were, "Don't be sad, my Victor. Just remember, I love you so much, Papa. Take care of Mama. I love you both so much." With tears in his eyes, Victor said goodbye to his parents. They took their last embrace and kissed each other, and Mary genuflected to Victor and whispered, "Be with God."